that nature is a separate thing from us and we can just exploit.
I have to admit, in the end, I ended up properly.
We've been separated from the people that so many of us rely on.
As is the love, support, and kindness that has been shown by so many of you.
Something huge is brewing behind palace walls. And no, it's not what you think. A surprise royal message has everyone talking, and rumors suggest it could change everything we thought we knew about the monarchy. You won't believe who's stepping up. Stick around, and don't forget to subscribe for breaking updates. It began with just a few words. No visuals, no fancy announcements, just a cryptic message from the palace. A formal statement will be made at 6 p.m. That was it. There was no explanation, no press conference, and strangely, not a single leak, which in the royal world is nearly unheard of. The media went into full alert. Anchors filled airtime with endless speculation. Reporters raced to palace gates, and social media buzzed with wild theories. Was the king stepping away? Was someone in the royal family making a big personal announcement? Or was it another unexpected twist? But as the hours passed, the silence only made things louder. The world was bracing for something big, but what came next caught everyone off guard. And not just because of who delivered it, but how they did. At exactly 6 p.m., all royal social media channels went live. And it wasn't King Charles who appeared, not Camilla. It was William and Kate. There were no gold chairs, no flags, no elaborate royal backdrop. Just the Prince and Princess of Wales standing side by side in a softly lit room. Kensington Palace, but stripped of formality. They looked calm but serious. They didn't read from a script. They didn't speak like people performing a duty. They spoke like people with something to say. William's voice was firm but sincere. The monarchy isn't just a symbol, he began. It's a responsibility. And with that, he launched into something no one expected, a quiet questioning of royal tradition itself. He asked whether royalty today was truly serving the public or simply preserving outdated customs. Kate followed, and her words cut even deeper. It's not about titles, it's about trust. Her voice, steady but emotional, carried a message loud enough to echo through generations. But that was only the beginning. Then came the real shock. With barely a pause, William and Kate unveiled something completely new, the Diana Initiative. This wasn't a typical royal charity. It wasn't a gala-driven, heavy foundation with carefully planned photo ops. This was deeply personal, and it had Kate's fingerprints all over it. Inspired by the late Princess Diana, the initiative would focus on compassion, transparency, and connection, not just words, but action. Kate explained how Diana's legacy didn't end with her. It lived on in those who believe that kindness isn't weakness, and that leadership must come with empathy. But this wasn't just about the past. It was about reclaiming something long overlooked. Kate made it clear that she wouldn't just lend her name to this initiative, she would lead it, personally, visiting families, listening to unheard voices, and spotlighting communities left behind. The message? The monarchy must do more than appear. It must act. And as the video ended, the world stood still. But inside the palace, the mood was anything but calm. The public reaction was immediate and massive. Royal watchers called it a turning point. Social media was flooded with praise. Commentators described it as the first truly modern move from the royal family in decades. But behind palace doors, total silence. No official statement from the king. No warm tweet from the palace account. Nothing. That silence said everything. Sources close to the palace later revealed that King Charles was stunned. He reportedly watched the broadcast in real time and, after a long pause, turned to an aide and simply asked, "What did they do?" Not because he didn't understand, but because he did. What William and Kate had done wasn't just bold, it was unprecedented. They had stepped into a more powerful, public-facing role, and they hadn't asked for permission. The initiative was thoughtful, well-prepared, and impossible to criticize publicly, but the fact that it happened outside the palace's control, that was the real shakeup, and it was only just beginning. As praise for the announcement grew, something unexpected started to happen. A title began to surface online, one that hadn't been used in years. The People's Queen. It wasn't official, of course, but it didn't have to be. It came from the public, from people who saw in Kate something familiar and something new. She wasn't just stepping forward as a royal figure. She was showing up as a real person. Her first appearance after the announcement wasn't at a ceremony or banquet. It was at a small mental health clinic in Manchester. No press, no speech, just listening. Days later, she visited a shelter, again, unannounced. A staff member shared a photo of her kneeling beside a woman holding her hand. "She didn't look down at us," one visitor said. "She looked us in the eye." In those small, quiet moments, Kate redefined what it meant to lead. She didn't claim Diana's legacy, she lived it. And while the public embraced her, others in the palace weren't celebrating. While the world focused on Kate's rising star, William was making moves of his own. But he wasn't loud or dramatic. They were quiet, steady, and clear. He didn't ask for permission, and he wasn't seeking conflict, but he also wasn't backing down. Sources say that after the announcement, William expected pushback. What he didn't expect was the coldness from Charles and Camilla. They weren't angry, they were distant, dismissive. But William didn't flinch. In a private conversation with a senior aide, he reportedly said, "I'm not worried. This isn't a debate. It's damage control." For William, this wasn't just about modernizing. It was about breaking the silence that had followed his family for years. He had seen what that silence cost his mother. He had seen what it demanded from Kate. And now he was choosing to lead differently. Behind the scenes, he began reaching out to younger royals, Beatrice, Zara, Eugenie, reminding them that family isn't just bloodline. It's shared values. And soon those values began to spread. While William and Kate pushed forward, the palace scrambled to respond, but found itself in a trap. They couldn't publicly oppose the Diana initiative without looking outdated. They couldn't pretend it hadn't happened without appearing out of touch. So they chose silence again. But inside the palace, things were far from quiet. King Charles was deeply unsettled, not by the project itself, but by the tone of independence, the lack of coordination, the growing shift in public attention toward his son and daughter-in-law. Camilla, according to palace insiders, felt even more threatened. She had spent years shaping her public image, supporting causes and building trust. But in just a few minutes, Kate had reignited the public's love for Diana and placed that legacy right back at the heart of the monarchy. It was emotional, unspoken, but very real. And in the royal world, perception matters. The shift wasn't official, no press release declared a new era, and no roles were formally reassigned. But still, something had clearly changed. You could feel it in the air, see it in the headlines, and hear it in the way people talked about the monarchy. What William and Kate had done wasn't just another round of royal charity work. It was a message, a vision, a quiet repositioning of what royal service means in the modern world. The media took notice almost instantly. Coverage that once revolved around King Charles's engagements and Camilla's causes gradually began tilting toward the younger couple. It wasn't dramatic, but it was consistent. The stories getting the most traction weren't about formal state dinners or ribbon cuttings. They were about Kate showing up at community clinics, William spending time with local youth leaders, and their joint efforts to engage people where they are, not from a pedestal. Behind the scenes, the dynamics were shifting too. More and more royal staffers reportedly began coordinating directly with Kensington Palace instead of Buckingham. The Diana Initiative's early programs were launched with a surprising level of independence, something unusual in a system built on centralized control. And then there was the public response. In Cardiff, during a televised town hall appearance, Kate took the stage and shared a message that summed up everything she and William had quietly stood for. "We're not here to rule from above. We're here to walk alongside." The room went silent. There were no elaborate metaphors or royal catchphrases, just clarity, just heart. That single sentence resonated deeply with people who, for years, felt distanced from the monarchy. And suddenly, the idea of royalty didn't seem so far removed. More than that, it felt human. Kate's work through the Diana Initiative continued to expand. Counseling services were launched for children dealing with personal trauma. Educational partnerships were announced to help support early childhood development. One especially moving moment came when Kate sat in a circle with a group of grieving teenagers, sharing her own reflections on the importance of feeling heard. There was no glamour, no ceremony, just quiet presence. And that's what made the difference. Across the UK, people began viewing Kate not just as a duchess or a princess, but as someone who understood them, someone who listened. William, too, began stepping further into a grounded leadership role. But unlike the monarchy of old, he wasn't stepping above others. He was stepping with them. His passion for climate action became more direct, more local. Rather than just speak at global forums, he began meeting directly with small environmental groups, listening to young activists, and supporting projects focused on local change. These weren't photo ops. They were steps towards something bigger, a monarchy that works with people, not over them. Even their team's approach shifted. PR strategies that once aimed to preserve tradition started embracing transparency. Annual reports were promised, budget disclosures were discussed. William and Kate wanted the public to know where every pound went, how their initiatives worked, and what impact they were having. It was a radical idea for an institution long associated with discretion and secrecy. But that was exactly the point. Meanwhile, inside the palace, this new model was being watched very carefully. Some senior courtiers admired the fresh approach. Others felt uneasy, uncertain about what it might mean for royal protocol moving forward. After all, if William and Kate were rewriting the rulebook, what happened to the old rules? One insider put it simply: they've created a new center of power, but it's not about control, it's about connection. And that's where everything shifted. The monarchy, once viewed as distant and unreachable, was being reshaped into something living, something relatable, something open. But what made this evolution even more compelling was that it didn't come from force. There was no dramatic speech claiming revolution, no moment of confrontation. Instead, it was all delivered in soft tones, through actions that spoke louder than any declaration. That's how movements begin, not with a roar, but with a whisper that grows. By this point, it became clear to many that Kate was no longer just in line to become queen. She was already being treated like one by the public. Not because of her title, but because of her example. And William? He could have demanded the spotlight, but he didn't. Instead, he let Kate lead where she was strongest. He supported her initiative. He stood beside her, not in front, and in doing so, he showed a different kind of strength, a kind rooted in humility. That dynamic, their quiet balance, is what's setting this new chapter of the monarchy apart. And people noticed. Polls showed Kate's approval ratings hitting record highs. Public trust in the monarchy, once shaky, saw a noticeable bump. Even some who had grown skeptical about the royal family began saying something few expected to hear again: they're starting to feel like our royals again. It wasn't a PR miracle. It wasn't orchestrated spin. It was authenticity. For years, the monarchy struggled to stay relevant in a fast-changing world. But William and Kate found the answer, not by chasing relevance, but by embracing realness. By the time their video announcement had been viewed millions of times, one thing was clear. This wasn't just a bold moment. It was the beginning of a quieter, deeper transformation. The monarchy wasn't falling, it was growing into something new. And whether or not the palace ever admits it, Kate and William didn't just start a program or make a speech. They opened a door, one that once opened may never close again. What William and Kate did wasn't about rebellion, it wasn't about titles or power, it was about values. They didn't ask for the spotlight, but when it came, they used it, not to shine, but to reflect something greater. Kate stood in Diana's shadow, and instead of running from it, she honored it. And William? He didn't take center stage. He shared it. He supported, he stepped back when needed, and he let empathy lead. That's not a weakness. That's leadership. So the real question isn't whether the monarchy is changing. The question is, has it already changed? Let us know what you think in the comments. Are William and Kate quietly building the future of royalty? Or is this just a passing moment of hope? And if you want to explore Kate's journey from Duchess to national icon, or how William's quiet choices may shape the next generation, check out our next video right here. The story isn't over. In fact, it might just be beginning.